I'll be there short.
Yes.
All right, so you're used to seeing someone else sit in the seat and kick us off. Marta suggested that she was ready to maybe have somebody else spend their evening with you all. She loves you. It's not about you. But she has been the consortium person for the whole time. She's been a commissioner, and so I thought I'll step in. Now, I hadn't realized how many of my Wednesdays were committed already because of Dr. Cobb, but it's okay. So we're here. I will be chairing or facilitating. I think of myself as a facilitator chair. But I thought because we do have, I think, some new representation on the consortium, let's just start with those in the room with your name and maybe the jurisdiction and then how long you served on the council. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Heather Craycraft from the town of Superior, council member, and Jen Cowish couldn't be here tonight, so I said I'd join and get to hear all the great things. She's like, it's one of the best committees around, so thank you.
And how long have you been a council member?
Just 13 months.
Okay. Great.
I'm Sean McCoy, Mayor Pro Tem of Longmont, and I've been on council and off council, and so this is my 7th year of being on council, and so I think that the consortium is one of these great foundational organizations that help us kind of understand where other cities are coming from with their how they tackle doing different problems that we all are kind of facing, but sometimes we don't realize that everybody's doing the same thing.
And well, Nick, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, good evening, Nick Robles. I'm staff here in the Commissioner's Office. Been part of the Commissioner's Office since November of 2018.
Third medium commissioner, and I was first elected in November of 2020, so I'm just going to work.
I'm Holly Roden. I'm the mayor of Lyons. I've been on the town board since 2020, which is actually when I joined the consortium of cities. So, and this is my final hurrah as mayor.
And I'm Deb Fahey. I've been on city council in Louisville since 2019. I beat you all. And I was on consortium, then I got put on CML, now I'm back. So I'm happy to be back.
Good evening, my name is Taisha Adams. I use she, her pronouns, and I serve on city council in Boulder. And I've been serving for 2 years.
Hi, Scott Furley. I'm the chair of the local improvement district for Niwot. So we're not a town, we're not a city, and we are governed by our commissioners. And so I'm just on this consortium just to kind of learn from what other cities are doing and just kind of have a beat for reporting back to Niwot. And I've been on the local improvement district for 8 years since 2008.
I'm Miguel Aguilar, transportation planner, so staff with the town of Erie.
Welcome. And now we'll go to those of you on the screen. We'll start. I'm just going to do it in the order of the names that I can see. Anil.
Yeah, Anil Besmilli, council member from town of Erie.
Thank you. And we're asking people to just say how long you've been on council in your or in whatever position.
1 year on the council.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you. Crystal.
Hello, good evening. My name is Crystal Prieto. I am on the city council for the city of Longmont, and I just joined council this past December. Nice to meet everyone.
Welcome. We're happy to have you. David.
Yes, good evening, everybody. David Friedland from Lafayette. I've been on the council for 2 years and excited to participate in this group.
We're happy to have you. Now, can I scroll down? There we go. Ken.
Hi, I'm Ken Lenarsic, town of Jamestown. I'm the town administrator there. I was first elected to the town board in 1992. And since that's, it's a longer story, but I served as a town trustee for a number of years, also for mayor pro tem, and did 5 terms as mayor. And right now, I'm just helping out as much as I can. I'm a volunteer town administrator. In Jamestown, we have no term limits, so we can work for nothing for as long as we want.
Well, thank you for doing what you do. Megan.
Hi, everybody. My name is Megan. I serve in the Boulder City Manager's Office, so I'm on staff, and I have been supporting this group for about 2 years, and excited to work with Councilmember Adams as our new representative. Also, we do have another staff member from Boulder who may be logging in around 7 for the minimum wage conversation. Her name is also Megan, so she may log in a little bit later, but thanks for having me.
Great. Okay. Thank you for joining us. Paloma.
Hey everyone, I'm Paloma Delgadillo. I've been on Broomfield City Council for 3 years at this point, and I've been on the Boulder Consortium for a bit at this point, but I've never made it in person because I have a different board meeting right before this one. But hopefully one day I'll be canceled and I'll make it. So good to see you all.
Well, we're happy to have you any way we can get you. Sama?
Hi everyone, Sama Fox. I'm staff for the city of Louisville.
Thank you for joining us. Did I miss anyone? Okay, so we wanted to just start off with just some level setting because it's a new year. I'm new as the facilitator. We have some new members, and just a discussion on, everybody doesn't have to answer, but the prompt that was in the agenda is just what motivated you to volunteer to serve? What do you hope to get out of participating in the consortium? And just for other things that we want to talk about is just review the topics that came up in the December survey of the things that the consortium wanted to look at in the coming year. We've got new people. I guess those were maybe after the council elections for those that have November elections, but just new things that may have come up. And then I'd also like to make time later when we talk about topics to talk about just issues that you're seeing in your city that you want to bring to the table. I think some of you have just mentioned how helpful it is to have other Boulder County municipalities in the county to share things with. So to start with, what motivated you to want to spend your Wednesday night here every other month and just jump in?
Is that food?
No, yeah, well, the food, that's a great answer.
Because I'm not eating meat.
Yeah. Well, you should, it's good.
It's like that. It's
It's Flower Child
Oh,
in Boulder, a very good
Yeah.
restaurant. No, any thoughts about, I think it's maybe this is actually the conversation is, what do you hope to get out of this? How can this be a valuable tool for you and your council?
Well, I'll jump in. I got volunteered via consortium 6 years ago. But I quickly realized that there's just so much value in hearing about the challenges and solutions from other municipalities. For example, Paloma very kindly put Lions in touch with the Broomfield economic person to talk about how Lions can better work with our small businesses to help them be more successful, which was super valuable. So thank you again so much for that. Yeah. So, and I think, just there's the way I look at it, there's really no new problem under the sun, right? And so to the extent that we can learn from each other and support each other, it's fantastic.
So, thanks.
I
Anybody else?
know what you just said. I think the really valuable function of this board is to collaborate and to come up with consensus. And so nobody is jumping out doing something without the support of the surrounding communities. And we can all accomplish a lot more, have the support of the surrounding communities.
I would absolutely agree. I think that's really the motivating aspect of it all, that I think that we hear, you know, what's going on in regards to like things like recently dealing with ICE and those aspects where people are concerned about it, and how, you know, each community handles that sort of divisive sort of issue, or some sort of good issue like Sundance or some other thing like that. So, you know, how those things get tied in together.
I would agree. A motivator for me definitely was just emergency response and disaster planning and management, and between how many people commute in and out of Boulder, the city of Boulder, and then just the different relationships we have there is something. ICE is certainly something that I've been thinking a lot about, and even the emergency shutoffs and the energy shutoff, like just being in coordination around that. And when they restart, there's, you know, other additional wildfire. So I'm just really grateful for the opportunity to weave a little tighter, and then just the federal brouhaha in general. It's not just in those areas, but in every area there has been some breakdown that's going to require us to step up and step in together harder.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else at all? I'm hearing a lot of value in just the conversations and bringing things to the table and having a chance to talk about them. I thought it would be helpful to spend some time just looking at what surfaced in the was this December survey that's on here, the topics that people wanted to see included in the main agenda. It's at the bottom of, I can read them, or we can put them in the chat, but.
Oh, yeah, sneaky. It's sneaky. That roller.
Getting away from it. So, and those of you who've been on Consortium, please, you know, you helped create this list, but what was identified last year at the end of the year for this year: transportation, Sundance, housing, economic vitality, state budget impacts, sustainability, disaster and emergency management, homelessness, community action. And that's a lot, and we meet every other month, so there's 6 meetings in the year. So that's more than one topic per meeting. I thought it might be good to spend some time both, you know, identifying things that are not on here that we may want to put on here. And I don't know whether, like, how to respond to ICE is incorporated in disaster and emergency management, or whether that's its own topic. Whether, you know, everybody went through their budget cycles and we all, I think, had to do some belt tightening. Yeah. Maybe talking about budgetary challenges. This state budget impacts were mentioned, but you know, what we're all seeing in our local economies. I don't know how many of you were at the Boulder Chamber's annual meeting on the economic forecast, and the state demographer, is always there. That was very interesting. I think it's at least the second or third year in a row that we've had similar data. You know, I was talking about we're really not creating a whole lot of new jobs, and we're not seeing the kind of in-migration we used to have. And all of the work, you know, for as long as I've been in public life, working on public policy, has assumed a certain amount of growth in the state and dealing with the impacts of growth. And now we really have to shift and deal with the impacts of not having growth and not having young folks come. So that might be another thing for us to talk about.
Well, you hit on something there that kind of a former city council member, Shakita Yarborough, and I, because Longmont touches into Weld County, we got to go to the Weld County Commissioners, all community meeting, and the state demographer was there. And she was the sweetest person in the world. She just said, you will not survive and have the quality of life in just the sweetest and kindest way to those folks out there if you continue to treat the immigrants and others like that as poorly as you have been.
Wow.
And
Wow.
it was shocking. And sadly enough, it appeared to go over their head like jet fighters, and they didn't pick up on what she was saying. So go figure, because I was just like, oh, that's nice. Because she was so sweet in her delivery and everything like that, so polite, but it was so obvious that none of them understood that if you continue to try to pick up them, these workers, you're not going to have the economy you have right now. And you don't have the industry that Boulder and all the other Front Range, cities and communities and counties have. So you might want to stop doing that.
I'm amazed.
I was blown away.
Did they say that they didn't believe her or
No,
that they
no.
didn't understand
It
her?
was pretty clear that they didn't understand what she was saying, because she was being pretty polite and trying to be subtle and not really stick her finger right in their eye. But it was so obvious that you'd have to not know what she was saying at all, to just kind of sit there like they were like, what? Cracking up.
If I could make a suggestion
Yeah.
about the topics.
Yeah.
So it seems like over the past 6 years, in this body, housing and, budget are always a concern. And so I would suggest maybe considering allocating a certain amount of time every meeting to housing. We all come across different housing challenges and solutions, and then also maybe a little bit of time to budget, which could include what the state legislature is up to now at the state house may impact the budgets. And maybe consider keeping those sort of through lines throughout the meetings, and that could free up some time to go deeper into other topics.
How people feel like about that suggestion? Good, yeah. Yeah, Crystal?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. I actually work with the Emergency Family Assistance Association, so I'm around a lot of the conversations involving community need, kind of current temperatures of the community, what some of our vulnerable populations are facing. And so that would be a good space to kind of give updates if there is anything new or any legislation coming down the pipeline that might impact community in that way.
Thanks. Yeah, I like that idea. I think those are perennial issues. And what I was thinking about with this list is some of these things like transportation, we have other tables that we sit at, like Dr. Cog and the Boulder County Sub-Regional Forum, where we work on those things, that this may not be the best place for that. We do have a regional housing roundtable, but I don't know how many folks, there's not a direct elected official presence on that roundtable, I think, as far as I know. So, things that we didn't identify for other kinds of tables where we might sit. So maybe all I'm saying is I'm not sure what we want to talk about on transportation of this list, but so yeah, other topics and what we've done, my understanding, each meeting there is a topic on which each community makes a presentation of what they're working on, and then there's just general discussion as well. So There's also a list of the topics that people said they wanted presentations on, and it's kind of pretty much overlaps a lot of what was identified as other topics for discussion. But public health was one that was identified from. It's gun violence prevention, regional transportation issues. So yeah, I think that's already covered. But anything else for either topics for the main agenda or updates? Yeah.
So I was curious, so one of the things that I'm really excited coming down the pike for Boulder City Council is table, what is it called? Table simulations, tabletop
Oh, yeah.
disaster
Table
response,
exercises, I think, yeah.
you know. And we actually talked about this at the city council meeting that we had with the county commissioners about just, coordination. And all of our staff are coordinated, but like, we don't necessarily do those together. And this came to my mind because I went to a CML conference a couple of years ago and they had tabletops. And I was like, wait, I mean, again, I don't need to know everything, but just to know what's happening in the ecosystem, like 1 hour out, 10 hours out, which is really cool. And then again, even from both a response that could happen from a wildfire, this energy thing, and the ice things, right? Like how are we mobilizing when there's different types of threat, and just having an idea of like, again, we don't need to know the same grain size as our staff on all the different things, but I do feel like just having a general idea of the different components and how it affects different parts of our geographic ecosystem is very interesting.
I believe, and those of you who've been on this consortium for some years, Mike Chard has come and made a presentation.
And does the thing for us.
Pardon?
And does the simulation thing.
I don't know about the simulation.
Right, because he's really down to do simulation.
Yeah.
We talked about it for a few
And
years.
he's great. We've been out to the facility. We've had a couple of meetings out of the facility, which has been fantastic.
Okay.
And I kind of think we can't do that enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even if it's got the ones, that'd be good. You know what I mean?
Well, we can always, Mike's great to have come and he can come back. I'm sure he's happy to do that. Yeah, you can always learn something new, and for me, it's incredibly reassuring actually to hear what they do, because you can't imagine how they can organize all the jurisdictions and all the communications and all the people, and then you listen to him and they actually do, and it's very, like I said, it's very.
The command center is something else.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
Also, there's just business on y'all, and that's real, and I would love us to act like something's gonna go down.
What?
Soonish.
Yeah.
So there's that, and then of course finance, and more so from the perspective of like, it's a well-oiled machine, and that's great. But my question is, how do we make sure that our communities are benefiting as strongly as members and companies and others who have invested in, and that's great. But our communities are investing significantly in this. And I just want to be really like stewarding that responsibility from that perspective.
What would that mean for our conversations? I don't know who is spearheading this that would be working with Sundance on something like that. Do you
Well,
know?
certainly somebody from the city manager's office, but then there's the Visit Boulder, Charlene, and that has been like such a great point person. And I'm also on the Visit Boulder board, so I also am looking from that perspective of like, okay, does everybody have their, HOAs? How do we get them to allow community members to do short-term rentals during festival? How do we, get our hotels and everybody prepared? How do we make sure that the cleaning services and the are like sourcing from our community as much as possible? That we
Louisville
can't get
is
away with.
in the process of coming up with a licensing program for short-term rentals and ADUs. And the other thing you were mentioning besides ADUs?
Just making sure that they're bidding locally. local things.
Yeah.
That thing.
Yeah, and so our cultural board is also working on getting the hotels lined up so they're charging the right price per month and, not huge, expensive rooms for the time of the sunflower. Yeah. So we're working on that, but it would be good to have all of the surrounding communities kind of cooperating and working together again on pricing, and transportation is another big issue because, how are they going to get from Boulder to Louisville and from Louisville back to Boulder or Longmont or Lyons or wherever they're staying to come and see a show?
There's so many people that have such high expectations, and we keep having to tell them, this is Boulder's show this year. This is their agreement. And all these other folks wanted to hey, I want to latch onto this. It's like, we'll do whatever they say. Our portion of that aspect is our sense, because we don't want to step on toes, and we want to be that support so that in future years, maybe when they do expand, we're there.
They're still bigger than anything that we got.
Yeah, I don't-
David Rowe.
Oh, no, we're talking about
I feel about that.
Grass Film Festival in Lyons. I mean, there's a lot of complementary things. I don't
Yeah,
think there's,
exactly.
it's not just like this one piece of
No,
it.
it's
It's a
big.
big pie.
Yeah, no, I realize that. I'm just saying that we're,
And food too.
well,
why
that's
I'm
the big
looking
one
at
right there.
Longmont.
We're
I'm
talking.
like, and I was asking them, like, are we sourcing locally for our food? How do we even do deals where we pay farmers in advance to make sure that they have,
Well, so,
anyway, that's the
Wait,
thing.
so
But I like
there's-
points on it.
no, there's a question in the chat that I
Oh,
think
sorry.
this is at the heart of this conversation, and for me, it's a question. So we can talk about all of this, but I think there are folks already working on all these issues, and I don't know who, you said
Oh,
city manager?
I mean, there are 100% sure there are. I think where I'm asking for and saying is like just the redundancies of like, instead of I heard from X about X, I heard from the person who's doing the work. And, I think that they would be willing and open to want to come here
To come,
and
yeah.
tell us
right.
what's going on and how we can answer any questions that you may have.
From a state level, Lisa Kaufman's now leading the Sundance.
Oh, she, I laugh because she leads everything.
I know, yeah. I think that's Heather, she's on it.
She has endless bandwidth. Okay, so this is something where maybe we want someone from Sundance to come, someone from the visitor and tourism bureau,
If
somebody
nothing else,
to come.
visible.
Yeah.
What's about it?
Okay,
Maybe.
anything that's missing that we feel like we want to bring to this table?
I'm gonna have another idea, somebody who's only gonna be here for one more meeting probably.
Yeah, good.
But when it comes to, vulnerable immigrant populations, would it be useful to have District Attorney Doherty come in and talk about what the role of municipalities are in that? And what our, as electeds, what are the possibilities and boundaries there? I say that having accompanied an immigrant family down to Centennial last weekend for an ICE check-in appointment. And I can tell you something, it was terrifying. They're fine. And I do think that my presence as their mayor made a difference.
Well, yeah, I mean, how did you get connected to do that? So I've heard about folks that will go and they just sit with them when they're in court.
Yeah.
And it may not be an immigration related matter, but they're going to court and they're concerned they may be picked up by ICE and you're just there to be a witness.
I found out about this family through a personal connection, but then in doing some, I made some calls to get some coaching, and there are different organizations that provide accompaniment. What I was told is that they're not allowing people to accompany folks anymore unless you're their lawyer, but I just thought, well, I'm gonna try it.
Uh-huh.
And we did. I mean, you put on a middle name tag and people will let you in
Yeah.
places they don't.
That's true. Well, I thought what people were doing was just sitting in the courthouse next to them outside the courtroom when they get called in, and the courthouse is a public place. People
Yeah,
can-
they may be. So it wasn't court, it was like It was an office park office building
Okay.
next to the Centennial Airport. Yeah, so, but I can put you in touch with the organizer, people that I spoke to.
Okay.
But I think, you know, one thing we have in common as electeds is we want to help our communities. That would be a good way to do it.
Okay. We are gonna have to pare down this list also. And so, you know, we can send out some notes afterwards and get feedback on really how we might rank all of these things in terms of priority. And same with, you know, the topics that we want to have presentations on. So let's turn to that and identify for the next meeting, which will be April, Holly's last meeting. You know, what we would like communities to prepare some information on so that we can all share it. And I can read the list again, but I think it doesn't have to be limited to the topics that were identified before. So we've talked about Sundance, we've talked about housing, and maybe having that maybe be a regular check-in, transportation, state budget impact. So by April, the budget will be going, it'll be just, I don't remember the calendar that well, but we'll know a lot about what the state budget's gonna look like. Public health, gun violence prevention, regional transportation issues, workforce education issues, emergency management / fire prevention /
Next
mitigation.
stop on, the next meeting would be June, no, eh?
No, it's April.
No, that after.
Oh, after that.
June, just for the.
Yeah,
state
June
budget.
10th. Yeah, that might be a good time for the budget
Oh,
conversation.
no, yeah, I'm asking about like, is that too
Yeah,
late or could we wait till?
I don't know. I'd have to look at the legislative calendar. They work on the budget after they get the March forecast, which comes in on March. They're working on the budget right now, but they finalize it after the March 1st forecast. So it could be, we could know a lot about it by then. Although, yeah, you all follow these things through your own councils. So maybe would be redundant, but stuff, updates your own.
I think maybe on the 10th, it would be interesting to see, okay, we do follow it, we do get information, but how are we gonna handle? Some communities can handle this different than others in the sense of Longmont has kind of a rainy day fund. And so we weren't in a position where we had to let anybody go. Because we had that rainy day fund and the redundancy. And so, or at least not anybody in a, you know, full-time type position. So that's where we were a little bit different. So maybe after the budget, we might find that we have less state funding, all of us.
Well, and will Prop 123 funding be affected? Will Medicaid funding be affected? Like, who are the populations who are going to be affected by this?
That feels like a June conversation. So I think we need to get the legislature, get the session behind us, give our staffs an opportunity to think about how all of this is going to affect us, and then we can have that discussion here. And maybe everybody can, you know, maybe bring 10 minutes of conversation about what your staff are seeing as what that impact would be. Yeah, Crystal?
I just wanted to note kind of another thing I'm seeing that is, I think, just worth at least mentioning here. So in dealing with family homelessness, right now there's not as many resources available to families experiencing homelessness. I know that there's a board or a committee that comes together to kind of tackle and solve that problem, but how I could see that coming to play in the consortium is I know the Emergency Family Assistance just recently got a grant. I think it was like some Bezos grant, $5 million, in which they're really going to start doing a lot of work and pushing toward helping families go from homeless to obtain stable housing. The city of Longmont is also looking at redirecting some of its funding as well. That has been, there's conversations and appetite around redirecting some of the funding that's been allocated solely toward single individual homelessness now that we have like the coordinated entry program, so on and so forth. And so just for the other municipalities in the room, Boulder, City Council, Lafayette, and Broomfield, this is a movement that's starting to gain some momentum. And so as you're looking at the budget and as you're looking at funding allocations and where that funding is currently going, and then just kind of considering a lot of the data that's coming out regarding family homelessness and how a lot of these families with children don't have a place to go and there is a lack of shelters and funding, just kind of wanting to bring that up as well. I don't know if that's a conversation we want to have. Again, there is a committee that meets and talks about homelessness, but they are not all elected officials that make those decisions around funding allocations. So it might be an appropriate space to talk about that here or invite them to come and speak, either or.
Okay. I think I need to learn more about a little more about what you're thinking, like what group, and because I know there are different conversations at different tables. Marta Lochumin, Commissioner Lochumin, chairs a Boulder County regional homeless table that is comprised of elected officials and trying to look at shared regional solutions, but that's not DOLA money. It's not 1-2-3 money. It's not these grant funds. It's something different. So kind of wanting to know which conversation this would be here. So we can talk some more about that.
Yeah, I'll do some research and then kind of bring some more information back to.
Okay, that'd be great. Yeah. I don't mind duplicating. I just feel like if there's already a bunch of people that are working on it, hopefully we're all connected with that work through that other table. Like, just like the Boulder County Sub-Regional Forum about transportation, where I think we're all at that too. Let's we've identified just sharing how our communities are dealing with whatever comes out of the state budget process. We'll do that in June. But what do we want to identify for April for our
I think this disaster management one is the one. I'm very concerned about the fire danger. We could get more rain or snow in the mountains and have a snowpack, but I think down here it's not going to matter at all. We're still going to be dry as anything. And I'm a teacher at Monarch High School where fire burned right up to the doorstep. I'm very much aware of the concern of a repeat event, and our springs can be really windy and really dry at times. And April might be a good time to kind of hone in on that.
The Louisville Fire Department is having a wildfire and conflict creation risk assessment open house on the 18th at 5:30 at the fire station number 1 on Main Street in Louisville. So, and you can go online and print out the whole assessment ahead of time if you'd like, but I think coming to that would be really helpful. And Louisville has been trying to emphasize that the emergency management efforts need to be not just about wildfires, but also about flooding. or the shortage of water because of the shortage of rain, or whatever emergencies happen to come up, but not just wildfires. But that's our main focus because of the marsh.
And I just want to emphasize, I'm not interested in getting a 45-minute presentation on what they're doing. 20 minutes is great, but I'm really more interested in just the simulations of different, and I am open to your idea of, a simulation that's specific to wildfire, because we know that that is an increased risk, but I also like the idea of having a simulation around something else that, is another kind of concern. We can decide what that could be, or they may already have a variety of different options to choose from.
Right, and we need to partner not just with fire, but also with police department. If there's a school shooting, or there's so many emergencies that could happen, and we need to be coordinated on how we deal with it.
David?
Yeah, thank you. Just to add to that conversation, one of the things I think we saw recently with the fire at 287 and 470, right, was all of the emergency personnel did a great job. Everybody got there really quickly, but it was very clear, very fast that the exit routes were not clear. The community didn't understand which ones they didn't know, right? And things could have gotten really bad really fast with people in their cars. And so adding to this piece of the tabletops and the conversation, right? Part of it has to be, how do we communicate with our communities about what they need to do? They know they need a go bag. They know they need that, but do they know their exit route, right? Things like that you don't think of until you really, really need it. So we'd love to have that as a piece of, like, how do we engage our communities more so that we know the information, but they do too.
Well, and not only know, I think people have the bag. Because they know they need it, but they don't have the bag. So,
I think to the point of evacuation though, in Lyons, we're small enough that we can do evacuation drills by neighborhood with our fire district. And I think that's the kind of planning that's really helpful to people. So we know which streets are gonna be one way if there's a fire. And there's really only one way to go if you're in Lyons, but we know. And so to the extent that other communities might be interested in talking to their fire districts about, okay, so for densely populated areas, how do we conduct drills? Or at least make sure everybody has the info.
So I see Anil's hand. Are we talking about, so I think we've got two different things. One is a presentation by Mike Chard to just talk about what they do, how they do it, because they have some tools on evacuation routes that they activate, and I've not seen them used, so I don't know how they work, but that's one thing. But another thing would just be for each of the jurisdictions that's represented here to share how their communities address these things. Because everybody does have a plan. We may not each know what it is, but we all do have plans. So I think that would be the topic. Anil? Did he just? Anil, you had your hand up, and I think it's down now.
Sorry, I was talking on mute. So I just wanted to add one quick point on this one, where Town of Erie, we did recently on a resilience plan for not just fire, but multiple things that a town could face, and how do we mitigate them and go deeper. It was just at a very high level of what are the things we should be looking at. And we'll go into deeper dives as we go along this year.
So I'm hearing folks want to do that next meeting. Okay. And again, I believe that the practice has been that everybody shares 10 minutes of what your community does, and then we can have some discussion about, oh, I like that idea, and how can I do that in my community? And that's the kind of networking that this group is really, really good for. Did we include this in the agenda? I guess we didn't, but there's there are lists, so there's the handbook of the consortium that also has just the previous projects that this group has worked on together that I think is worth spending some time looking at. I was hopeful that in addition to just being an information sharing and networking opportunity, that we might identify something that we could do together collectively. And if you go all the way back to 1989, there was a transportation coalition that that worked on with the financing for metropolitan planning at the state legislature. The recycling center, Boulder County Recycling Center, was born at this table, which is really cool. What led to Boulder County's first open space sales tax started at the consortium, the hazardous waste facility, lots of things where we've said, okay, we're missing some things in Boulder County that our communities can all benefit from. Let's talk about that. And even though it took until 2023, I guess, to get a countywide affordable housing tax passed, the regional housing partnership came out of this conversation. So, this is where we can all sit down together. The shared gun violence prevention agenda came out of the consortium. So I'd love us to think about whether there are some things that we're really missing here in Boulder County. We're good at solving problems, and we're really good at coming together and thinking about those things.
I have one item that's come up in Louisville and Lafayette and Superior, and that's the air traffic on RMLA. Is there anything as an area that we could come together and say, don't fly over us?
Yeah, well, you know about the noise roundtable, about
Yes.
the litigation. Tomorrow morning at the Northwest MCC meeting, we'll be talking about whether the MCC wants to take it on. This is the Mayors and Commissioners Coalition.
That would be great.
Well, I actually don't favor that,
Oh,
but
okay.
but not because I don't think we all ought to come together and work on it. I just don't think the MCC is the place to do it. That's all. Just because they don't have the expertise, the staff that work on that, and we work on actual transportation infrastructure issues. And just my personal view. We'll see what comes out of that meeting. But I've been overruled in the past or outvoted in the past on that issue, and I probably am going to be outvoted again tomorrow on it. So, but depending on what happens at the MCC tomorrow.
We're looking at rate and fees here later on this spring for landing fees and other things like that, and tie down fees and hangar fees, and what that looks like, and how long a hangar lease needs to be, and can we make different rates for planes that are, different lengths of leases for the type of aviation that we want to see at the airport, like electric aviation or non-leaded fuel planes and that type of thing.
Yeah.
But those are the sort of things that once one community gets a handle on, the others go, oh, that is great. A lot of people think that landing fees reduce noise level. I don't know that it does that, but it does make your facility self-sustaining, or at least to a certain degree self-sustaining. And that's kind of one of the goals why we want to look at this a little bit more in depth, because then we determine, how many grants we take from the FAA and other things like that. And how married to them we have to be. So those are the sort of things that we'll be looking at, and we'll make sure that we pass that on to you.
We're just concerned because the number of flight schools at RMMA has gone from 2 to 5 in the last, I think, 10, 15 years. So the number of flights out of RMMA has gone up astronomically because they're flying north to go to their training session area. What we have had no success speaking with RMMA or the FAA. They both, no matter who you're talking to, they say it's the other guy's fault. And we don't have any control of that. And so we're saying, if all of these communities came together and said, okay, guys, do something. Because this is just, I mean, even we did get RMMA to change their flight pattern. So they were flying further west before they went north. We were hoping to get them to go all the way to the open space before they turned. That's the plan, the flight plan that we agreed to. But they're not going all the way west. So now they're coming up McCaslin, which means they go right over my house.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they're the little loud planes, and it's just one after another, after another, after another. And then again in the evening when they're all coming back. So if we all get together and say, because Superior's got the same issue, they were having problems with it going further east over Superior. Now it's going west over Superior, but still Superior, Louisville, and then up to Boulder County.
I'm sensitive to this issue. The noise roundtable didn't produce anything.
Nothing.
The litigation has not been successful. It's on appeal right now. I hear what you're saying if we all got together, but they don't care. And so I just don't know what we might do. I think it is an issue that needs to be really figure out how you get the FAA to deal with it. And that means experienced lobbyists in Washington that follow their agendas, that know how to work the federal regulatory process. I think it's a big project that requires some real money and expertise. Well, that's just my thought, because
I understand.
We've just not gotten results on that.
No, they both blame each other.
Can I add?
And ultimately,
It's the same
some
with
people
Excel.
feel that that Jefferson County owns and operates the airport, right? And the Jefferson County commissioners actually could do something about this. And they are our friends and they are our neighbors, and we sit around lots of tables with them, and we join and collaborate and support one another in all kinds of ways. And maybe this is one where we just all have to haul them in here and say, look, yeah. And Neil, sorry, I didn't mean to ignore you.
You're good. So I agree with you. I'm on the advisory board for Erie on the airport economic development. And we went through all these discussions. And one thing was there is a huge drain from our general fund to just manage our airport. And we did visit all the fees and leases and everything when the FAA related part was kept on hold with all the reasons that you said. And tomorrow we're meeting about we came up with a plan of at least bringing that drain from the general fund to a big extent by making it self-sufficient and not take money from Erie. So that's half a problem solved. But the other concerns that we all heard here are the same in area as well. 6 a.m. noise and all that. Just wanted to add the 2 cents.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks. David?
Yeah, sorry, I missed a little bit of the conversation there. Got kicked out somehow. So I remember the noise roundtable, and this is a really challenging topic. But I do think that we've never really had a coordinated effort from north of the airport to say, here's the flight routes. FAA, tell us why you don't like them. And so I do think that some coordination could be helpful. I don't know where it comes from. I don't know if it's this body. I would also add that what I see happening, and yes, RMMA and the flight schools is a problem, but there are planes coming from all the airports in the area, and they're flying, quite frankly, too low per the FAA guidance over communities. Um, and they're doing that for a lot of reasons. But I think we could have some success just through education to say, pilots, FAA says you should be 1,500 feet above a community at all times. We kindly ask you to be 1,500 feet above a community at all times. And, for at least Lafayette, when folks are coming 700 feet, 400 feet, 900 feet above us, taking that up to 1,500 feet minimum would really help the noise issue and also be a safety benefit too. So I don't know if it comes from here, but I do think a coordinated effort should be probably considered somewhere if we can.
Okay, well, like, we'll be talking about it sometime between 8 and 9:30 tomorrow morning. So, and Erie's there, and Lafayette, everybody's already there in that conversation, so we'll see. Well, if they want to take it on, if not, we can bring it back here. So good. I did want to just, note that back to the Sundance conversation. We may see an uptick in traffic because of Sundance as well. Not just private jets, although private jets could be a big part of it because they do have a lot of those. So at 7 o'clock, we could take a short break or we could power through here. How's everybody feeling? Feeling powerful? Okay. Well, we wanted to come back to the previous effort to talk about a regional minimum and have everybody here together. Is that who got left out? Oh, that's in the wrong waiting room. Yeah. So I don't know that we all need an update, but Boulder County did change our schedule of increases starting this year. It went into effect January 1st, where instead of trying to get to 2030, to $25 an hour by 2030, we increased to join the city of Boulder's wage for this year, and then we will just be rising at consumer price index going forward. And Nick has a slide to put up just to show where everybody is. And I thought, all I was hoping we would do at this meeting is just each of the jurisdictions that's represented here, just indicate, basically yes or no about where your councils are on whether this is even part of your work plan, whether what you think your council may want to do. I have to say on behalf of the Board of County Commissioners that we don't know that we're the folks to actually try to lead this conversation at this point, given where we are. But I just thought since we have all the communities in Boulder County here, we could at least share out what what each of your entities are looking at. Is there any way you can do that so we can see if somebody has their hand raised or something in the chat? Is that possible? Or maybe you'll just.
I think they can see the screen. Oh, sorry.
No, I can't see whether somebody has their hand raised. Can you all see the screen? Those of you online?
We can.
Okay. All right, well, I'll just have to peek at Nick's screen to see if somebody has their hand raised. But so let's just go around the table about whether your communities are even entertaining a minimum wage discussion in 26 that would be adopted in 27.
I don't know that answer. I apologize.
Okay, well, that's okay. Yeah.
We have not discussed it, so I'm gonna lean towards a no, but
So we are discussing it this summer, but it's mainly going to depend on what the surrounding communities do.
Discussing this summer, you said?
Right.
Okay.
At the city of Boulder council priority meeting, one of the priorities that were identified was around exploring whether to increase the tip credit for the city's local minimum.
But no change
To
in the regular way. What about Longmont?
We had a very extensive process and had a entire fishbowl sort of roundtable sort of thing going on that we even included members of the Lafayette City Council. Sal Tapia Vega was part of that. And so you know, probably could, if he was here, probably could talk a little bit to that. But my take is that after that, the conclusion is that for the most part, all of our businesses were above market in what they were offering. And maybe in the future, if things start slipping where people are getting paid less, that might come back as a conversation. It might be a couple of years from now.
So you don't think, even with your new.
I have to try to remember, I don't think we put that on our council retreat agenda. So I'm pretty sure it's not gonna be moved.
Yeah, okay. David, can I just call on you for
Absolutely.
yeah, for Lafayette?
So we have our council retreat this weekend. I'm sure it will come up. We've been I know our mayor has been polling our counselors sort of where everyone is at with this. And I think there is some appetite for having a conversation. But I think people have a lot of concerns still. And I think similar to maybe our neighbors in Louisville, we don't really feel like we're the right ones to be leading this. But certainly if our neighbors were doing things, we would probably think through it a little harder too. But I think there is some appetite, but I think there's a lot of wariness similar to Longmont that our businesses are doing a fairly good job. And also that, looking around Denver specifically, right, and seeing how the restaurants have been impacted there, and just having concern for our local businesses, if we did make a change. But we'll see where we land this weekend. I think there will be a conversation, and there could be action items from that.
Okay, thanks. Erie, Anil?
I didn't have anything else.
Yeah, I know you're kind of a tricky one because you're between Weld County and Boulder County, and that
Mhm.
makes it tough. Who am I missing?
I'll say
Oh,
that we
yeah, I think I know the answer, but yeah.
we've never even considered it because 99% of our businesses are small local businesses and we're a seasonal economy, so
Yeah,
we put them right under.
right. Yeah,
Broomfield. Pardon, Broomfield?
yeah, thanks, Broomfield. Paloma, can you,
I did not hear you. Sorry about that.
oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, is Broomfield talking at all about having a local minimum wage?
Yeah, we did. We voted on it. Was it last year? Yeah, it was early last year, and that failed 5-5. So I was one of the council members who voted in favor of moving forward with it. So I still want to do that. I still think that it's important to do. And part of the reason it failed was because there wasn't a regional approach. So we weren't kind of moving together on this one. So if there's any way to revive that conversation and come up with something that's sensible for all of us, I would love that. I think it would be great. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I think it would be really good to have something that's a step in the right direction.
Okay. One reason to bring the conversation back is because there is new membership on many of the town councils and boards of trustee, and just wanting to know whether that sentiment has changed. So I'm hearing some hesitance, like we'll do it if you do it, maybe. And like I said, we don't feel like Boulder County's in a position to just lead it and try to get to joint action on this, that if communities are interested in doing it, my thought was that you all, you can talk to each other. Louisville and Lafayette can talk to each other. Broomfield, I don't know how, what regional would look like to you, whether it would be Adams County and Boulder County.
Yeah, I mean, we would love to partner with you guys. We'd love to partner with anyone just because Broomfield, even though we are a city and county, we're kind of funky shape. If you haven't noticed the map, we're kind of weird where you can seriously drive. Actually, in the extreme case, we're connected to Skystone via one lane on Wadsworth. So, but you can seriously drive 5 minutes and go across Broomfield. So because of our strange shape, I think it would really, I think the regional approach, like I was willing to go in by ourselves, but I do think to get the rest of the council on board, we would need any region, whether that's Adams or you all, we would love to partner.
Okay. Okay, well, like I said, you all heard each other, and I think if somebody wants to pick this up, that's not me, and say, let's get together and work on this, I'd encourage you to do it. Our feeling is I'm happy to do this, not as part of the consortium, because I don't want to take consortium time on something that everybody isn't involved in. And so it would be, another convening, and I think we've done what we really feel like we can do. And we are not interested in tackling the tipped credit issue. And my suspicion is that for communities that haven't done anything yet, now that that bill has passed, that you're going to have to make that decision and probably face very, very, very heavy pressure to increase the tipped credit. So, it's just not something we would be joining in. We're trying to unshare here so that we can see you again. All we can see is the great big minimum wage chart. Yeah. I'd love to be able to see you, feel like you're part of this meeting.
I can try to unplug, I just
Okay.
don't want to lose.
Uh,
Let's see if that.
Yeah, I think we just, now we've lost it.
Are we still?
Ooh, the meeting, well, we're in the meeting, but
Yeah,
yeah,
still
we're
in the
gonna
meeting.
connect it back up. Yeah, maybe it'll just go away.
Oh, no.
You excuse it, escape, can you escape?
Well, I've already closed out of the PDF that was presented.
You know what it is? Okay, I have this happen every so often. What you have to do is go to the end of it and then of your presentation. Yeah, and I have this happen every so often with my eyes.
After all this time. So.
There you go.
There we go.
Yay.
Okay, we've got you back. Yeah, that's, so Crystal, I couldn't see your chat before. That was why I thought this conversation was ripe, is that you have new members. I heard, Jake Marsing talk about wanting to do this. And I know that new members of the Lafayette City Council are interested, so that was why it seemed like maybe there was a conversation to be had. So we are, oh, I'm sorry, Crystal, yeah.
I just wanted to put a plug in too, because I was having some conversations with the Early Childhood Council of Boulder County, and working kind of within the basic needs field, and a lot of the population who are receiving minimum wage or maybe less than if they're undocumented. Even if maybe cities and municipalities feel like this is too touchy right now to touch, or maybe there's not enough momentum, there's still other ways that we can support these communities that, via like childcare being the example, right? And some of the work that the Early Childhood Council is trying to do, because that would provide childcare to some of those families in need without impacting their income directly, causing them to lose benefits. And so if we decide as a collective not to pursue a minimum wage, however this turns out, doesn't look like it's going to be a conversation here. But I just want to put the plug in that there are other ways that we can still support this community without raising their wages. We can get them access to childcare. We can get them access to other services that will be just as beneficial to their lives and improve the quality of life. So just a plug.
Yeah, thanks. That's important to remember.
And I'll just quickly add on to that, there's an economic development component to that, as we're losing our younger workforce and we want families to move here and we want people to have families, and childcare is, we had the presentation last year on early childcare and how expensive it is, and not only how expensive it is, but the access to it. There's not enough people doing childcare. And so that is also an economic development issue too. You're looking at who are we going to have in our community for these jobs, and then also, what was just mentioned. So just kind of highlighting that onto that is a significant issue. That's a barrier.
I just appreciate just recognizing that we have more levers than what we're actually using. I definitely be interested in more of this conversation.
Yeah. Well, so we are 15 minutes away from adjourning. And I would like to use this time actually for each of us to just share maybe a current issue that you're wrestling with on your council, in your community, just so, just to share. And that could lead to yet a future topic, or that we could have some discussion about any of those. I'm going to start with Anil on the screen here. So I don't mean to put you on the spot. And if you don't have anything to share, that's okay. You don't need to. I just feel like we're talking more around the table, and I wanted to include those of you on the screen.
I don't have anything.
Okay, thanks.
There are so many things, but not relevant to consortium of cities.
Yeah. How about you, Paloma? Anything top of mind that you want to share? I think this time has also been used for community events that you want to make sure people know about.
Sure. So in terms of things that are top of mind, and I think this is where we can learn a little bit from each other. Broomfield is kind of in the phase of going from that growing city to more maturing city. We have probably about 15% of our land available for development now. So the runway of development money is fading. The parcels that are left over are trickier, more contentious, that sort of thing. I think it's just a very interesting place to be in. So nuances with budget, that's another thing that always comes up, is that the liabilities are kind of coming due. That's a problem. That's a challenge with every single city and county. But I think getting a sense of how we all deal with it, that's something that's always top of mind and just a good governance thing for us.
Yeah. David?
Yeah, I'll certainly second the kind of, we're full for development and there's a couple pieces that are still open and people really love those pieces. And so I think we're challenged there. And then the flip side of that, which I know we have on our list, but I just want to add a note to it, is the economic vitality. We have a lot of empty storefronts. And so how we can, share best practices or, ideas of what worked in other communities, we could really use that. We definitely need to try to fill out those vacancy rates. And then I'll add a third one, which I know a few of you have been dealing with too, flock cameras. It just hit us pretty majorly the last day in Lafayette, and so we've been talking about it behind the scenes for a while. We know that this is a big deal, as evidenced by some of our neighbors who have dealt with this, and so I think we're going to have a conversation about where we go with our contract. So that one's top of mind right now as well.
Yeah, that's, I think, top of lots of people's minds. Did I get all the jurisdictions that are on the screen? I can't see everybody.
Did you get Ken? So
Oh, Ken, are you still there?
you may back up.
Still here.
Okay, then, sorry. Yeah, I'm just, the view is funky and I can't see everybody's names.
It's okay. It's nice to be a fly on the wall sometimes. Well, I think that in Jamestown, we're still and always continuing to trying to deal with the effects of power shutdowns and how that affects individuals as well as the businesses and the people in the community. So what we're trying to do is try to compensate for persons not having Wi-Fi, because in Jamestown there's no carriers that provide 5G service. So we depend on Wi-Fi, and when XL shuts down, it also affects eventually, if not immediately, our ability to have a Wi-Fi. And without Wi-Fi, a lot of the community doesn't have 911 service, or if they don't have a hard line. So we made some progress. The mayor has been working very hard on this, but there's so many different things that happen, and most of them are negative. So we try to meet improve on all of the possibilities, which is during the last one we had a warming place, it was cold, and we did have Wi-Fi service at the fire station, the training area, and people could come up there and work. We'd like to expand on that next to the people will be able to also come to the town hall and other places in Jamestown where there would be a service through Starlink that people could come in and take advantage of the Wi-Fi and be able to get their emails and such. That's kind of the biggest thing. There's a lot of other things as well. Obviously, fire and flood are still always a problem, but that's about where we're at right now.
Thanks. Steve Silverman in the sheriff's office, he's their communications specialist. I don't know what his title is, but he works on the communications issues, including 911. I think,
Yeah,
I think your mayor is.
We're working very closely with the sheriff's office.
Okay.
And some progress has been made also through left-hand fire with Chris. So the mayor has been working with anybody that will listen to him, and they are making some progress with that. They did, which is improvement, agreed to recharge the batteries that will keep people who have hard lines working for a while. But if you don't have a hard line and you don't have Wi-Fi, then hopefully there'll be some ways that the town can compensate.
Yeah, I think that's a concern for everybody. Yeah, Scott?
So a few things, major top of mind for us is economic vitality and economic development. And now we're pretty much all small business owners, and it's our neighbors that own the businesses. And we're seeing attrition moving from like that front space retail restaurants to more like creative agencies and things that aren't as town facing, and kind of, so we're very concerned about how can we support our small businesses to keep our small local ice cream shop and to keep our Niwot market family owned. And so that's top of mind, as well as the Excel shutdowns. I mean, that was right before Christmas. That was tough on small businesses. And then Sundance. I mean, Sundance is here year round, the Institute. And they want to engage in all of Colorado. And so there's going to be opportunities to really kind of work with them. And so that's something that's we're talking about too.
Mm-hmm. Maybe next time you can tell us about municipalization and.
So yeah, that is percolating too. Possibility of incorporating. The conversations are happening, and there's a few people leading that. And so we'll see where that develops, and I'll have an update next time.
Okay, yeah. Tanisha?
So I mentioned the council priority agenda meeting, and power resilience continues to be at the forefront of those conversations. To many of the points that Ken brought up on the individual side, medical, right? And also just businesses and who's responsible for what. I mean, that's basically, we said a letter, but the bottom line is to your earlier comment, we can anticipate more wind events this spring, more disruptions, and that's number one on my mind right now. Number two, wildfire mitigation, again, in that response planning. We have a lot of pockets of people who know a lot and have practiced in all of those things, but we are still working to make sure that we don't have a mechanism of knowing like who's actually been trained on the things where. You might know who, or you might, but we don't have it plotted it out. So I think that's some of the work that Mike Shard and his team are working on, which is very exciting. I would say the business community and just the storefronts continue to be, the downtown continues. And again, there's been lots of different activities and things, but the bottom line is it's businesses to be able to participate. So economic vitality.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I'll say all of the things that have already been mentioned. Housing is a big issue right now. Fire mitigation, any kind of emergency. We did join the county's emergency response group. We're just trying to kind of plug along and do what we can do. Remind you that we are having the wildfire and conflagration risk assessment open house on the 18th at the fire station. And we're having the Blessing Belechimanga concert. So he's a world, he says, an internationally acclaimed Zimbabwean musician who has toured in over 20 countries. So if you're interested, sounds like it's going to be a good concert. Yeah.
So what about Maya?
Lions economic vitality or sales tax is okay, but we're worried about it, especially with a bunch of empty storefronts and lines. Although the corner of 4th and Main is now starting to go vertical, a beautiful new sandstone building, which is really complementary to the rest of the town. So that's great. Power wise, we have our own municipal electric company. And I know everybody's jealous.
Yes.
Well, Longmont does too.
Yeah, we make we're not beholden to Excel, and we make our own calls, which has been great and scary. March 7th is the Lucky Lions Run for the 4th consecutive year. It is a St. Patrick's Day themed 10K and 5K to benefit the Lions Community Foundation and the Lions Emergency Assistance Fund. So come on out. Come on out and run or walk or whatever.
Yeah, and 2 minutes.
Four
One for
things,
Longmont,
four
one
things
for-
here, okay? So, I serve on the, Special Longmont Tourism Improvement Board, which is the taxing district for hotels. And the one thing that we're hearing, that's why, about Sundance, is that we've got to get our local restaurants be open from 10 to about midnight, when these guys that are working the event are coming back to the hotels and will want food. So it's the mindset that we have to reestablish with our community members that are used to closing the doors at 9:30. And so it's going to be a little bit of a slog, and I think it's going to be kind of something that we have to start kind of getting them kind of into the groove this summer and further into the fall, so that they start to have maybe an employee base that can fill that niche for at least those 10 days solid, if not more, because we have days on the beginning and days on the end of tear down, set up and tear down type of element. The other thing is on Wednesday, the 18th at between 5 and 7 at the Longmont Museum, there's the Sundance film American, I'm not going to get this right, but Chuco, the Legend of Luis Valdez. And that's going on there, as well as on the 21st through the 22nd, the Winterfest and Ice Climbing World Championships will be among. So.
Okay, yeah.
Short and sweet for Superior. We're finalizing our comp plans, so looking at the areas, a few parcels of development. Evacuation is the constant subject. So when we already talked about it once, the evacuation plans, I took some good notes, and it's top of mind. So
Yeah.
it's that disaster preparedness.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we're out of
Thank
time. The only thing I'll say is, look for, in the spring, we'll be reopening our wildfire mitigation grant rebate program. Everybody will get a mailing on that, so you'll know about that. We will have the chipping program, all of those things that were really, really successful there. So, yeah, and just watch the Wildfire Partners page and all the things we put in the paper. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, thanks for a good meeting. Thanks to those of you on the screen too.
Thanks.
Bye.